Hello, my name is Christian Grey. My tastes are very singular. I do not do romance. I do not do dates. I do not sleep in the same bed with my woman. But enough about me. It is time for Tom Richardson to do his take on his movie review of 50 Shades of Grey. So you don't have to listen to me anymore. So, hey guys, this is my movie review for 50 Shades of Grey. Believe it or not, I did see this movie after all the negative reactions to both the book and the movie that was just recently released around Valentine's Day weekend. But I did get around to seeing it. Kind of a long story as to how I saw it, but and why I saw it. But the movie is a film adaptation of the E.L. James book, which is a trilogy of books that originally was written as fan fiction for a website and was obviously changed later on, um, so she can create her own books off of these stories. But the story of 50 Shades of Grey, basically, you guys, it's a English literature student who wants to interview Christian Grey, who's an entrepreneur. She's doing it for a friend of hers who's sick for the day and needs somebody to interview this guy for the newspaper article she's writing about. And so Christian Grey agreed to this interview. And so she interviews him for this university newspaper, and one thing turns into another, and somehow, someway, Christian Grey expresses a personal interest in her, and so the two of them start seeing each other. But it doesn't take too long for Anastasia Steele, who's played by Dakota Johnson, who interviewed this guy earlier in the movie, to realize that this guy has a very strange taste and sexual preferences. He doesn't like, as I did in the opening skit there. Um, he doesn't like sleeping in bed with the same woman. He has all these really strict rules as to what he can and can't do with people, and so there's all that kind of stuff. Um, Also, this Dakota Johnson character, the Anastasia Steele character, she wants this to be more so a relationship. She wants to take him on dates, and doesn't want to be on this contract that he's really trying to enforce on her. All these sexual preference things that he has that he wants her to do. So this movie is kind of this ongoing battle of Christian Grey trying to get this girl to sign this contract so he can basically have his way with her in this playroom that he has of gadgets and stuff that basically fulfill his sexual preferences, and he claims that it's for her pleasure more so than his. And so the movie's kind of this ongoing battle of why can't this just be a straight up relationship? Why does it have to be all this business stuff that this guy does for his business? And so the movie's really about that. It's really about this girl trying to figure out if she should say yes to this contract that she simply just wants to have a relationship with this guy with. And so the movie's kind of about that, ongoing mental battle of should I sign the contract or shouldn't I? And so the movie basically gives you all these points of, why she should and why she shouldn't be a part of this contract that Christian Grey really wants her to sign. So overall, guys, 50 Shades of Grey, it's one of those weird, unusual film experiences where you leave the theater not really quite knowing how you felt about it. There's a lot of different ways one could see this movie. It's definitely a film where you don't really feel good what you saw, but you don't really feel completely bad with what you saw. It's one of those kind of movies where you just kind of have a hard time feeling what you want to feel about it. It's one of those kind of weird experiences. So overall, guys, for my positives and negatives of 50 Shades of Grey, Dakota Johnson, who is the lead actress of the film, brilliant job. I actually really liked her performance as Anastasia Steele in this. Definitely a lot of more humor to the character that you'd expect. Just a really, probably the most, has the most humanity to the character out of all these characters in the movie. I just really liked how she portrayed the character, kind of how she doesn't really know what she wants to do when college is done with, and she wants to see this guy, really just pursue this as a regular relationship. And so the movie's really about her and kind of if she wants to sign this contract or not. And just the way she was handled, the way she kind of added more of a fun vibe to the movie, I thought was really neat. So huge thumbs up to Dakota Johnson. She really did a great job in this movie. Danny Elfman did the score for the film, and I thought it was very fitting for what he chose for the score. Beyonce Knowles, I think, put one of her new single songs out, which was used in the movie very appropriately. And so a bunch of other modern day musicians um, got to put some of their music into the movie, and it was really fitting for when we did get to hear their music. And once again, Danny Elfman, for the parts that was strictly the score that he made, very fitting for what he was trying to go for the movie that was being made here. I liked how Christian Grey's business and his personal pleasure are kind of one and the same thing. He claims throughout the movie that his business is so successful because it's all about what other people want, what his clients want, and in a way, this sexual experience that Anastasia Steele is experiencing with him is kind of the same thing. He's always kind of claiming that it's all about her pleasure and it's about making her happy and making her desires come to life. And in a way, his business is kind of like that. So I like how the movie is consistent as to how Christian Grey behaves both in business and in personal life stuff. I liked how he can make other people happy, but he can't make himself happy, and I think it's kind of that was probably the more interesting things they did with his character in the movie. Once again, was pretty consistent with that. I liked Christian Grey's sense of mystery. I really think there was a good um, sense of keeping this guy mysterious throughout the movie, and as we figure out more and more as the film progresses as to why he is the way he is, once again, they did a very good job giving this character a sense of mystery. So I really liked how Sam Taylor Johnson, who directed this movie, really kept a sense of mystery for this guy. And that's definitely something I wanted out of this character going into the movie. The film has a lot to say about people having singular interests in things. Definitely, people who are kind of closed-minded on experiencing other stuff. The film very much plays off of that. It also plays off of people who, always want to have a huge variety in their life, but they can't due to the person they're seeing not willing to be a part of that. So once again, I think the film does a good job exploring singular interests of people. So thumbs up to Sam Taylor Johnson. I really liked how she explored that aspect quite a bit in the movie. And I think with Dakota Johnson's performance as to how she handled her character, it adds a sense of humanity to the movie in the sense that, she doesn't really like what Christian Grey is doing to her in this playroom, that there is a sense of, sometimes sexuality does have its limits. Sometimes somebody likes it more than the other person does. And I really like how the film really just plays off of, what's too far, what's not far enough, what should be, restricted, what shouldn't be. Should there be rules like Christian Grey is always enforcing on her with how he wants this relationship to be handled? And it's just a very, like I said, when there is humanity to the film, it's actually done pretty well when they have it in there. I think the film also works as a character study. There's a lot of aspects about Christian Grey that obviously we don't even know about until later in the movie. But I think it does work as a character study as far as somebody who's kind of psychologically disturbed with something they did as a young person, and kind of how that stays with them in their later years. So once again, I think the film does work pretty well as a character study as far as how this psychologically impacts people when something happened to them in their youth that makes them think this way in their later years. So works well as a character study, and I got to give the film credit for that. But for my negatives of 50 Shades of Grey, and this is definitely, I can see why this film isn't quite getting good praise. Um, I do feel that the Christian Grey character did feel too stalkerish at times. I feel like is this person who's kind of always being like, oh, well, this is your choice. I'm giving you the choice to, say yes or no. We can stop at any time and everything bothers you. I feel like he's just too stalkerish. He's not giving this girl enough space, and after a while, it just kind of comes off as too creepy. And after a while, you kind of feel like he's going against his own words at times. So I don't like how the film treated him like a stalker. It got to the point where every scene in the movie happened, and I felt like they had to throw Christian Grey in there somehow, and it just kind of felt stalkerish to me and just not really necessary after a while. I also like how Christian Grey's character was very close-minded. There was definitely a lot of opportunities for this guy to change and for this girl, because Anastasia was very open with, letting him adapt to the way she wants the relationship to go. And after a while, I feel like he was just too close minded, and just it got to the point where it's just like, well, why doesn't she just leave this guy? Why doesn't she just dump him and try someone else for a relationship? It just got to the point where I didn't quite understand why she absolutely had to be with this guy and why this guy absolutely had to be with her. It became a little too close minded of a film after a while. I also felt that there were several side characters in this film that felt pretty forgettable. Anastasia's roommate was one of them. The parents of both Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele were both pretty forgettable. They're just kind of there to be there. And so even some of the friends that the two of them have outside of both their work and their relationship are pretty throwawayable characters for the most part. So I thought they could have done a better job incorporating why it was so important to have all these side characters in between the playroom scenes and things like that. And then it goes to my next point. I think there are too many playroom scenes in the movie. I think, even though I know this book is very sexual, like, it gets very detailed, and there's definitely parts in this movie that get very detailed and definitely pushes the R rating to what it will allow them to do. I feel like the film just sends it spends too much time in the playroom, and I feel like that really wears the film down, because when the film is interesting, it's usually when Anastasia's trying to get Christian Grey out of his comfort zone, really trying to turn this into just a regular relationship. And like I said, I liked the scenes where they really added a sense of humanity, and um, that this girl always has an opportunity to walk away or to say no or to completely stop as to what's going on. But like I said, just too many scenes happen in the playroom, and it kind of takes you out of the movie after a while. The film also sets up too much for its sequel. I know a sequel for this, happened in the books, and I know there's a whole trilogy of books of this story. And I know that I think they are doing the second and third movie already. I think they're already in development. But I think this movie sets up too much for a sequel, and actually, at times, I felt like this could have been a standalone movie. But knowing Hollywood and knowing them, if a movie makes money, they got to make sequels. Obviously, that I think that was the big factor as to why the ending scene felt so much like a setup to a sequel. But it just set it up too much to the point where I felt like I didn't really watch a complete story. And that's really too bad, because I found a lot of opportunities towards the end of the movie where they could have just wrapped things up completely. And because there was so much humanity with the Anastasia Steele character, I felt like she really wanted to leave this guy at the end of the movie. No spoilers, obviously, but all I'm gonna say is there's definitely a lot of times where she doesn't want to be with this guy anymore. I felt like they just really could have played off of that to conclude it, but because there's sequels, obviously they're keeping those way too open for when they're going to actually happen. And I think I briefly covered this earlier, but the film does go against its own rules a lot, and that's really quite too bad. Because Christian Grey, for this guy saying, "Oh, well, we can stop at any time," it kind of goes against those rules after a while. Overall, I'm going to give 50 Shades of Grey a 7 out of 10. That might be pretty generous considering that this film's getting a lot of really negative buzz right now. But I think 7 out of 10 is pretty appropriate, because I didn't feel awful watching this, but I didn't feel completely good watching this either. I definitely didn't feel like I was in the presence of a good movie, but I felt like I wasn't in the presence of a bad movie either. It was just kind of right in the middle. And at the end of the day, I don't really quite know how I feel about this movie, but I do feel that there is something okay out of this. Maybe it could be a good, red box rental for those who are really curious about this story. But overall, just an okay movie. I don't think I'd want to see a sequel, to be honest. I don't think I like this movie that much. But it did offer interesting questions. It still is expressed some ideas that are kind of still stuck with me as to how I feel about it. But 7 out of 10, 50 Shades of Grey is okay. If you like the book, this might be an okay rental, but I wouldn't go so far as to see this one in the theater. Just rent this one if you really want to see it.